Welcome to the second episode of Your Unanswered Questions podcast with Luke Smith and leading educator, professor, and the man of enigma
I love it, Luke.
that provides true value for everyone he speaks to,
Yeah.
Professor Leo Simpson. It's great to be with you today.
Yeah, great to be with you too, man.
And you speak in a way that people won't understand at first. I think that's an important thing because last episode, if you have not seen that, go back and watch that real quick. We talked about the importance of friction and the importance of sticking with something, even when it's not the easiest thing. And so I think that also applies to hearing great minds explain their thoughts, just like you. People may not understand exactly what you're saying, but they got to fight with their own thoughts, use it to get out of their comfort zone, and thrust themselves into a plane of beauty and self-optimization in a way.
That's
and
good.
so
That's good.
So
That's good.
you got to be willing to take in exactly what the professor.
You said in the classroom.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to challenge it, and listen, viewers. I will not be afraid to challenge Professor Simpson, but also know that there's a greater scheme to what he's saying. It may sound confusing and maybe enigmatic at first, but there's a theme. This guy knows exactly what he's doing. He knows what he's doing. Anyway, let's begin with the first question.
Okay, what we got today, Luke? What we got?
What should I do when I feel like my goals are too big or unrealistic?
What should I do when I feel like my goals are too big and unrealistic? So I'm going to give two things. The first one is I'm going to get with Daniel about posting a link in the description of a TED Talk that I listened to recently that talked about the real method of goal setting, right? And real actually stands for, something. It's, I think, resonant, empowering, and I can't remember the other two, but it was good. So I love to elevate the voices of other people who are saying something of value as well. So that's important. The second thing is I was actually talking about this in class with the life and career preparedness class over at Legacy yesterday. We were talking about vision and goals. And I said, when I think of goals, I think first and foremost, I think of a basketball goal or a soccer goal or a field goal, right? These phrases that are very, straightforward. And thinking about those are such that, like the basketball goal is much smaller, right? The field goal is much bigger, but you have other factors. And then you have the soccer goal, which is kind of like in between the two, right? Both of them have factors and forces against them and various different things. I think that because I was one of these people that, I got frustrated with goal setting. Very similar to this question. I even got to a point where I just stopped setting goals. It's like, forget it. I don't have no goals. I just do it, right? Because the truth is, when it comes to goals, you have to understand the goal, one. You have to understand yourself. And number three, most importantly, you have to understand the gap between those two. And the gap is the issue that people have. The gap deals with the skills needed, the time needed. Time needed could be relative. It could be relative to the level of your skill set. It could be relative to various different factors. Beyond the time, it's also the dynamics. What's the purpose? What's the point? Who's involved? Like, how important is it? Is it important enough for you to commit? And the truth is, at the core as to why goals become problematic in this way, consistent with this question, is because people are pursuing the goals casually. There's not a true intention from them in the context of what they do, why they do, and how they do. And that's where things have shifted for me, because when I think about goals now, I think about it differently than the basketball goal, the field goal, and the soccer goal. I think about it in the context of now targets.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm thinking like the dartboard, like you got the bullseye, right? Yes, that's a goal, but the difference is the bullseye requires that you be so precise, precision oriented in regards to it. So it requires that you have this context of who you are, what you can do, how you do it, and that there's this sense of growth and learning and opportunity that's bigger than just the point itself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what people miss out on. So, like, you take the first set of goals, basketball goal, field goal, soccer goal. Those are seemingly a lot easier to hit, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they're still more difficult to hit because of factors that a lot of people don't understand. How to kick the ball, how to shoot the ball, how to kick the football, how to deal with the holder, how to deal with the distance you're all that kind of stuff. But if you shift from, like, these seemingly obvious goals to the ones that are focused, because that's what a bullseye really is. It's focused.
Mm-hmm.
So set targets that if you miss, you actually have the opportunity to now then reassess, reevaluate, rather than just set goals that seem obvious but really you don't have the value to bring to it.
Yeah.
Which goes back to the things you have to understand about yourself, the goal, and then the gap between it. That's good stuff.
I'm trying to think of something to say. There's not much to say.
That's good stuff on that.
That's good. That's good.
Because there was a fight
Mm-hmm.
with goals for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even today, like, I've learned to set goals, if I'm going to use that phrase, that are not based on just the SMART framework, right? That are, man, I know what this is, but I forget it. That they're, of course, measurable, that they're statable, measurable, achievable, relatable, and time-based. I think that's what it is. I can't remember. Mm-hmm. But there's a bigger way to set goals, and it's really on the context of not only what matters, but who matters. And then how do I pursue that? Because ultimately it becomes an undertaking of activating potential within more than producing results without. Does that make sense?
It does.
So
it does.
that's how you navigate that, and I had to learn the hard way.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I've dealt with it. It's been fun.
Well, few people are more qualified to speak about that than you because you came out on top with it. You have seen both sides of it, and you know how to get to the good place of that and stay there, and
for sure,
and stay in a goal setting and goal reaching kind of environment. So I think that is the exact kind of advice that people need.
There's also something else I think that's worth being added, and that is, I think the biggest issue with this question is that people often make the goal the focus rather than what they're going to be able to become and to achieve and actually experience as the focus. Like, the goal really is designed to get you moving in a direction.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
If you don't achieve it, the reasons are more important than the result. Mm-hmm. And that's what people don't understand. And so they get enchanted by the goal and they get distracted from really what the goal is allowing them to experience.
I think that's the best thing you've said all day. I'm serious. I think that's really going to connect with our viewers here. I think that's how.
Yeah.
I think you just answered a previously unanswered question.
Okay.
I mean, that's exactly right because, I mean, that's just like you said. I mean, the goal itself is just a set of words. The experiences you go through, the experience you're trying to attain by getting a goal, it's all a part of this.
So I'll drop a bar real quick.
Mm-hmm. Well, you already did.
What I'm saying, but I'll say it again in a different context.
Okay.
When it comes to goal setting, if you focus on the result more than the reason, you will always find yourself frustrated.
Yeah. Yeah, good. That's a much more concise way of saying it.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. Well, personally, I think it's important to take realistic steps to reach an unrealistic goal.
Okay.
And that, is probably a little bit of a more professional focused approach than yours is, which I think yours is better. I think you know the way that I'm phrasing it, I think is focused on attaining.
Gotcha.
And so I think what you're saying, the experiences associated with it, the motivations behind having such goals, is an important factor that I've left out here in this answer. So I think the real answer is probably a mixture between both of our answers.
For sure.
But yeah, so I think it's important to take realistic steps to reach an unrealistic goal.
Absolutely.
There's nothing wrong with having an unrealistic goal. There's never too big of a goal.
I agree with that, by the way.
And that's been articulated throughout the entirety of history. In ancient times, fortune favors the bold. That was the big quote. Modern times, Steve Jobs has a quote that I like that I actually wrote down on the sheet right here. The people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
I love that one.
So that's great. And as far as my academics, I've always said to myself, the harder you work, the luckier you are. And I feel that because whenever let's say there's an assignment that I don't know if I necessarily have to do. It seems like every time that I decide not to do it, I had to do it, and then I get punished for it. And every time I decide, okay, there's a gray area, maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't, and I decide to do it, it's always, well, you don't have to do it. So that's perhaps a bit unlucky, but the point stands that the harder you work, the luckier you're going to be.
Yes.
You're gonna if you overstudy, and you know every piece of information about it,
you're more likely.
You're going to be lucky.
Yeah,
you're going to say, okay, well, there's some obscure questions in there. Well, I was lucky enough to know how to handle that, or how to connect different thoughts because I studied the whole thing. So, it's all about.
Have you heard that definition of luck? It's when opportunity meets preparedness.
I like that because that's exactly
that's what you're saying.
Yeah, the hard work here aligns perfectly with the preparedness.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think what we're saying is that it's important to have courage. It's important to underpin that.
You getting into my favorite area.
Yeah. You need to be courageous. You need to underpin that with hard work, but also probably most importantly, an understanding of why you're doing this.
Yeah.
And all your motivations behind it, because that is the most important part.
For sure.
I was going to add in there how you expect to help others with that. But I mean, there are personal goals. There's no
for sure
issue with personal goals. But I think it's important to ground our goals in service, no matter where they are.
Actually, I kind of indirectly alluded to it, and that is, like, if you're really going to have a goal, that goal should be more about the transformation that somebody else experiences more than yourself. And I'll tell you this, the bigger goals, they really, the ones you're calling the unrealistic goals, those goals should, if they are truly unrealistic, be related to the value that somebody else is going to receive, because those have the greater likelihood of being achieved when you take those realistic steps.
Yeah.
Because the boldness to go and say, I'm going to do something that creates value for someone other than ourselves at scale, that's why we have Apple. And I love it.
Exactly right. Well, that was a great answer to that question. I felt like we kind of fed off each other great on that one.
Yeah, for sure.
Lots of factors going on. Courage.
Yeah. I hope you got a question for that coming in the future.
Yeah. Well, it's up to the viewers. Think about courage. This guy's a courage expert over here. So, let's go to the next question here. This is a very interesting one here.
I gotta sit up for this one.
Let's do this one. What's the best way to deal with stress when things don't go as planned? So I'll give my answer for this one, and then you can...
Say the question again just to make sure I'm on point with it.
What's the best way to deal with stress when things don't go as planned? So, my answer... So, stress to me, a lot of times, comes from procrastination or a lack of doing something or something that needs to be done that is not done. Um, Typically, I don't associate stress with things that don't go as planned. That's more like loss or a feeling of defeat or hopelessness or something like that. So in that way, I'm not entirely clear on the question, but I'll try to focus on what I think the purpose of the question is, which is when things don't go as planned. And whenever you fall short, I think it's important to have a certain mindset in hand, and that is to make sure that the positive effects in the form of motivation and learned experience outweigh the negative effects, so that there's a net gain from that loss. And I have a very
Talking accounting to me, brother.
yeah. This is a former accountant right here. I have a very rudimentary example of this if you would like to hear it.
I want to hear it. Like I
Yeah.
want to be set up because
So-
you're throwing the alley hoop. It seems like it right now.
So I first downloaded the college football video game,
Okay.
last year in the summer. It just came out. They had a few versions of the college football video game, but then they had some NIL problems, and they brought it back last year. And so I
For sure.
re-downloaded it, or I downloaded the new one, and I started a dynasty with a Northwestern. It's in
Illinois.
It's in Evanston, Illinois.
That's where my brother went to school.
Really?
Yeah, he played football for them.
Really? That's an excellent school. So
He was recruited by Coach Randy Walker, who passed, and then he was recruited by Pat Fitzgerald, who ended up being the coach for a while.
yeah.
And then, but Randy Walker was the coach at the time. It
Wow.
was cool. Yeah,
That's a great story.
I know a little bit about that.
Yeah, so anyway, so I was playing this game, playing as this team.
Were they good?
They're not very good right now.
I'm talking about your dynasty, though.
Well, I'm starting how they are in real life.
Okay,
So
okay.
I had to bring them from being not very good to championship contenders. So I finally worked so hard. You have no idea how long this stuff takes.
I do.
Worked so
I
hard
do.
over the course of a couple of weeks. I finally got in the position. I had the team. I constructed the team for a championship winning season. So like the second game of the year. And in college football, you need to win every game.
Yes. If you want to make it to the championship.
Or darn near every game. And so you can afford one loss, but that's pretty much it, especially in the way this game is constructed at this point. And the first game, or the second game of the season, the first game I won, the second game of the season, I think I'm playing Michigan or something. And it is the most crushing loss I've ever experienced. There was some kind of technical thing. I didn't know how to do the field goal or whatever. And we were down by 2 points, game-winning field goal, and we missed it. And so we lost that game, and I thought there's no way we're going to go undefeated. And then I thought about this mindset of how can I make this loss a victory in my life? And I think that really applies to much more serious and important areas of life. And so I thought, okay, there are two things that I can bring from this loss. It's the motivation, the drive to make this a win. This has to be a win.
Yeah.
And also the experience. What went wrong? How can I improve? And so I think those are the two things that can help you focus on the ultimate goal, which is a net gain. Every time you fall short on something, make sure that was not just a waste of time, that there is a net gain from that. And I'm sure we all have experience with falling short. Is there a story you want to tell about that?
So, I won't tell a story because we'll be here for another 30 minutes. I'm going to just go with your story. And I'll share two things. One, there's a friend of mine. He actually wrote a book that talks about exactly what you're talking about. And the title of that book is Nothing is a Waste. The name of the author is Carl Wynn Jr. I think it's either Carl Wynn or Carl Wynn Jr. Nothing is a Waste. Get that book, okay? All right. Now, and I get no commissions off of that. He's just a good friend. Matter of fact, I'll share this. Talking about a story, I'll share the quick part of it that'll tie into that second thing. I've been fired at least twice in my life. And I've experienced a forced resignation, which is technically like a firing. And the time that I experienced a forced resignation, I was kind of like at one of my lowest points in my career. My second daughter, so I have two daughters. My second daughter, she was, just about to be born at the time, and then she was born like a few weeks after the resignation. And I remember sitting on my couch and just at the lowest point, like stressed, down, like, and Carl calls me. And in the course of our conversation, he gives me Nothing is a Waste. This is one of the reasons why I tell people, go buy the book. Because I lived it, right? I wouldn't be Professor Leo today if he didn't say Nothing is a Waste. So it's talking about that net gain. But here's the piece, the second thing that I was going to share, and that is I was talking to my personal finance class about this the other day. I've given them some frameworks in the context of perspective. Why perspective? Because perspective is what I call one of those magic words that make your life wonderful.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Perspective, though, can be flawed or it can be valuable. Okay? If you have flawed perspective, then you're operating in your life with perceptions. And here's what you need to know about perceptions. Whether I've said this before or not is worth saying again. Perceptions have problems that predictably produce when you practice them. But the valuable perspectives, they are based on principles. And principles have promises that predictably produce when you practice them. What you just shared are principles, right? Of course, it was a legitimate loss. But you get to take the perspective. You get to decide, now what perspective will I use in the context of how I deal with this circumstance? Then if you take what Carl said, nothing is a waste, then that means there's a net gain here and I need to identify it. Does it make sense?
That makes sense.
And so ultimately, it really comes down to the answer to this question is, what's your perspective that you've decided on? Are you dealing with flawed perspective? Are you dealing with valuable perspective that will enrich you in the context of leveraging the net gains? Because the truth is, this life works because of profit. It don't work because of revenue.
That's right.
And it don't work because of expenses either. We're looking at what's the net loss or the net gain. That's right. And at this point, I have the ability to leverage my perspective to always identify a net gain.
There you go. That's one of those hard-hitting quotes. This guy gives a lot of those.
Yeah.
That's right. I mean, that really sums up exactly what we need to say. By the way, we did end up winning a national championship in dominant fashion. We killed them. I think it may have been...
You learned from that situation, right?
So there was definitely a net gain. It was a great championship victory. I'm sure all the viewers are very passionate about my Northwestern team now. But anyway, so yeah, that's an excellent answer to that question, and that applies to every area of life, and it's great that you have experience in that, and I'm fascinated with this book that you brought up as well. Mm-hmm. Let's have one more question here.
Sure.
It's kind of shifting away from the... You're excited for it? Yeah.
Because I don't know where you're coming with.
Well, this is kind of shifting away from what we've been talking about, because I feel like the first 6 or so questions that we've answered over the course of the first and second episode, by the way, as I already said, go back and watch the first episode, because this is a building thing. This is a thing. This is a narrative that me and Professor Leo are going to tell that builds on itself. So it's important to watch all the episodes.
I like that.
So anyway, so the first 6 questions have been pretty much connected. They have the same overarching theme. This one is probably the most practical questions of the ones we've received so far. This is, how do I deal with feeling like there's no time for everything I want to do?
How do I feel about...
How do I deal with
feeling like there's no time
for
everything I want to do? Well, the issue is in the question. Everything you want to do. See, there's this phrase that I still haven't given a name to this perspective. I will very soon, and we'll get there. But there's 4 things that I, teach my daughters, emphasize in my family life, teach my students, and then also emphasize with those I do business with. And that is, do what's expected, when it's expected, with the right attitude, tell the truth. Now, in order for this to make sense, you have to understand the truth. The truth is the very clearly defined expectation. Okay? In the context of the very clearly defined expectation, you have to say, okay, so how do I tell myself the truth? And that is, I have to keep it in my mind, on my mouth, and in motion consistently. Which means this. If the very clearly defined expectation says, I should be doing this because this is going to yield the greatest value and produce the greatest impact level of significance, then there should always be time for that. And if I don't have time for everything I want to do, what I want to do could very likely be getting in the way of what I'm expected to do. Right? And so the truth is, one has to live their life from the level of expectation and not desire. Bring their desires into the expectations and not let the desires become their expectations. Because the truth is, there's a reason we're all here. There's a purpose, right? And so if I'm at a point to where it's like I'm stretched and I don't have the ability to do what I really need to do, the truth of the matter is that I am actually now distracted and putting myself in a position to where I'm actually being disrupted. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
So how do I deal with not having enough time to do the things I want to do? Well, the problem is stop focusing on what you want to do and start focusing on what's expected for you to do.
Exactly
And guess what? You'll make the time for that and make sure you get it done. Why? Because it's an expectation. There's a penalty, if you will, if I don't do what's expected. But there's not a penalty if I don't do what I want to do.
Yeah,
I just
exactly.
don't get the satisfaction or the pleasure.
Exactly. It's a purpose and a service-driven life as
sure.
opposed to a leisure-driven life.
Yeah. Like, I want to be intentional, not casual. And only when you're living a casual life do you feel like you don't have enough time. Like, people ask me all the time, how do you do all the stuff you do? I say, I don't really do a lot of stuff. To you, I do a lot of stuff, but it's like everything I'm doing is in the context of something I'm supposed to be doing. And so I just navigate, manage the expectations, manage the demand, and then I deal with it and move around.
Yeah, and I think we're both still sensitive to those who think that they have a lot going on. They think they don't have time. Even just within the confines of their expectations.
Sure.
But it is a great point that inherent to this question is a flaw.
Yeah, the flaw is
Want to
inside
do.
of the question. It's
Yes,
like
sir.
what, and here's the thing. This doesn't mean that you should not want to do things, but your wants can absolutely create a disruption and a destruction of.
And they can be sacrificed for the sake of fulfilling your
Absolutely,
expectations.
absolutely. You just took the words right out of my mouth.
Yeah, my apologies.
No, that's good. Like,
Yeah.
It's better you said than I said because they'll resonate with you in that regard.
Well, so you use Apple Calendar or Google Calendar?
Apple.
Apple. Yeah, I use.
Well,
Google
that
Calendar,
depends on what I'm using. Like, if I'm using stuff from like the college, then it'll be Microsoft, and then you know, it just depends. But primarily the Apple.
Well, I think practically it is important to have a calendar, and time block things out because there's a saying that activities fill the time that you assign to them. So
Yes.
if you have 5 hours to do,
And it goes back to expectation. Like,
Exactly.
If you know this needs to be done, you need to set some type of parameter that corresponds to that expectation, right?
Yeah.
And so you use these tools to help you facilitate that. But at the core, you still got to go back to the principle of, am I doing what I want to do or am I doing what I'm expected to do?
Exactly.
Because I got plenty of time for the expectations.
Yeah. One more practical thing just for the viewer just to take away here. What time do you get up in the morning? On weekdays and on weekends, or does it not change?
It varies. It varies based on what's expected of me for the day. For example, there are some days where, classes may not start until 11:30, right? So I may have a morning meeting. Typically, I have a morning meeting about 8:45, and so if my morning meeting is at 8:45, I don't have to go anywhere for that meeting. I might sleep to 8, right? Or if and mind you, that's also, I probably was up to a certain point because a lot of the things I had to do in the day probably went into like maybe 10, 11 or so. It just depends on what that day looked like. Like yesterday, I had prep course stuff for the financial advisor, things that I'm doing. So it's like I was out until like 11, didn't leave the conference area until about 11:10, 11:15. I mean, So get a little extra sleep, baby, because
Yeah.
of what I have to do. Or if I have class early, I might be getting up like 5:30. So it just varies, right? And that's me. Some people these days, they're like, I get up at 3 o'clock every morning, or I get up at 6 o'clock every morning.
Yeah.
That varies for me, and that goes back to expectation, right? It's like, am I expected to get up early this morning?
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's important just to leave my my actual real life advice to the viewers. Personally, for me, getting up early in the mornings is a life changer. Because past 10:30.
Oh, that's too late. On the weekends, maybe I'll
Well,
get
as
to
a
that.
As a student, there are often nights where you'd stay up till 2, 3 in the morning.
Sure.
What I've learned is I would
Doing
rather
your dynasty, by the way.
Not doing, that's summertime. But anyway, I just think it's important to communicate there is really kind of a sanctity of the morning. I feel like it's a beautiful time of the day. Jesus got up in the morning, very very early in the morning to worship and to have quiet time with God. So I think it's a quiet. It's a very sacred time of the day, in my opinion. So that's when I like to get up, do my work, and that kind of provides me more time for the things that I'm expected to do. And as a bonus, perhaps some of the things I want to do.
For sure. There's something I want to add to the context of what can be thought about the peace of time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I live in a world where all of my parents are deceased. That means my mother, my father, their parents. So all the grandparents, it is me going forward, my brother going forward, right? Our children, future children. And I always ask this question. It won't be long because you got to close this out. But I'm going to give this to you. I always ask this question. Can they work? And the answer is always no. And I said, why? Because they're deceased. I said, yeah, but the real reason is, as it pertains to this, they have no time. Mm-hmm. Time is fundamental to work. Work is fundamental to time. And even life and time are parallel in context. And as a result of that, the truth of the matter is that if we don't regard time as sacred, as you're saying, the time of day and the things we do in the time and how much time we
in
spend,
general, like you're saying, yeah.
Then ultimately we're not regarding the fact that as infinite as time is in itself, it's yet limited in what we have.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that's a great point. That's a great point.
That's enough of my podium, so ask me if I'm anything else.
It's a whole, just umbrella of information. Kind of, some of it unrelated.
For sure.
But I think these are all important points that we're throwing out. Great questions, guys. They don't always have to be totally related. I think there's so much information that we've been able to experience and that you've been able to teach about for these years. And so we really love answering these questions for you. Please drop in the comments any questions you may have.
It might get answered.
It probably will be answered.
Yeah. Especially if you're in the community.
Especially if you're in the community. I will give you some more details in the bio about that. But yeah, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. That's going to do it for our podcast. Please cheer on Northwestern if you ever see them. Not because I went there, not because I'm even a fan of them. Just think
they're solid school.
Just think about net gain and learn that lesson. But yeah, please like, share, subscribe if you found any value in this podcast. And like I always say, if you didn't find any value, go back and watch it again.
And then
like, share, and
subscribe.
This guy's got good stuff. Thank you guys, and we'll see you for the third episode. Thank you.